Welcome to the Big Bag. My name's Mark Machado. I'm joined by cricket historian and writer Nick Brookes. I did think this was going to go live on the Big Bag Twitter account, but I've just been told it's not because we don't have to write an account. But if you're watching us on YouTube, then please do leave us your comments, leave us your likes, leave us your thoughts. We are gathered here today for T20 Christmas Eve. The IPL starts tomorrow. It's the granddaddy of all kind of T20 tournaments. Not quite the granddaddy, but you know what I mean. It's the big one of the year. We've got lots to get through. I'm super excited and super buzzed for it, and I know you are as well, Nick.
Really, really excited, man. A little bit disappointed because in previous years they've always had the first game on a Friday afternoon. And now it's been pushed back to Saturday afternoon, and I'm ready. I want it 24 hours earlier. I'm like a kid on Christmas Eve, chomping at the bit to unwrap my presents.
That's all TV, isn't it? Because I hadn't quite figured that out, but I was like, oh, but it feels like it normally starts in the week, during the week.
Yeah, I guess that must be a TV thing. Although you'd think that in India, Friday night would be a huge slot that they're missing. But I guess maybe for global viewership, it's a bit more streamlined, starting on a Saturday afternoon / evening, depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah. The first game is, I had it on my list here, and I've
KKR RCB.
RCB, we'll get into that, but let's talk about the other big news, which we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now. Harry Brook has left the Delhi Capitals. He was a big money signing for the second season in a row. He won't be playing in the IPL. He's like to have a band. We talked about that last week. The news this week, though, is about who's going to replace him. There was a lot of chatter online. Would it be DeWalt Brevis? Would it be... I'm trying to think who else was associated with it, but it looks like, from what we're hearing, though there's been no official confirmation, it's going to be former Sri Lanka white ball captain Dustin Sharnaker. If you're watching this and you don't know kind of mine and Nick's background, we basically make a lot of Sri Lanka content. Nick's written the guide to Sri Lankan cricket, the actual history of an Islands 11, which I highly recommend you check out. And I just watch lots of it and sit in the spare room talking about it online all the time. And me and you are about as big a Sri Lanka fans as you can get, and we were pretty shocked by Dustin Sharnaker making it into the IPL 2025, right?
Yeah, really shocked. I guess the first thing to say is, why would they have picked him? And I think it's clear he was playing for the Dubai Capitals in the ILT20, and he had a really good tournament, albeit from a fairly limited sample size. So he faced 81 balls in the tournament. He struck at 202. He hit 13 fours and 11 sixes. So that's a boundary pretty much. More than a boundary every 4 balls. So he did really well in that tournament. It's worth mentioning he didn't bowl, so he won't bowl in the IPL. He's being picked as a batter, if indeed he has been picked. So I've said all that, but Marky, I think we should talk about why this is a weird decision. We've been watching him as a finisher for Sri Lanka for years, and I think it's fair to say that at best he showed really mixed returns, right? In T20Is, he averages 19.6, striking around 122. It just seems a really strange decision. He's got a really pronounced weakness against spin as well. I think everyone's known about this for a long time, but quick side note and a plug for Himanish Ganju, who's done a new website, t20bat.streamlit.app, which gives laymen like us the ability to get the kind of data which is usually reserved for analysts. And so you can go in there, you can type in a batter, and you can see how they've done in all the major franchise leagues with different shots, different scoring areas against different bowling types. And so I saw from that data that Sharnaker in major T20 leagues, it doesn't include the LPL for now, but he strikes at 93 against spin and has a really high dot ball percentage. So basically, he's a guy who can whack pace at the back end of the innings, but doesn't do that regularly. I think, for my money, if I was in the Delhi Capitals recruitment team, there are players in Sri Lanka I would have gone for ahead of Sharnaker, namely Kusal Mendis and Charatha Solanka. I can see why maybe they wouldn't have gone for someone like Patham Nissanka, given that they've got KL Rahul and they want to surround him with blasters. But, I mean, then if you spread the net wider, I'm a really big fan of Brevis. I firmly believe that he was picked for the IPL at the wrong time when he was too young and showed flashes of potential, and now he's going to really start coming good. You could have potentially also had, I don't know, someone like Ben Duckett, maybe Johnny Bairstow's long in the tooth, but I would pick him over Dasun Shanaka, even someone young like Loandre Pretorius. I think there were so many options out there who just provide you with something more reliable than Dasun Shanaka at this stage. I think the likelihood is that he probably won't play because now they've promoted Faf to vice captain. I thought Faf was going to start on the bench when Brook was there. But so, yeah, I can't see Shanaka being in the 11. I think he does a similar role to Donovan Ferreira, who's another guy who they've got probably warming the bench, and Ferreira would be ahead of him in the pecking order. I just find it pretty strange all round.
So I think I should make clear that in general, me and Nick are Dustin fans, right? However, the reason why I find it strange is because I don't think he's making a shrunken T20 11 at the moment. He hasn't been around that conversation for a little while. He slipped out of it. But there is, I think, an interesting thing here. That's that he was playing for the Dubai Capitals in the ILT20. He did really well there. He had a good, he was in good form in that tournament. And as a direct consequence of that, he's ended up getting into the IPL. When I first saw a picture of him with the Delhi Capital side, I thought maybe he was a net bowler. I couldn't believe that they were going to give him a contract. Not because I have anything against him, but because I think he's not quite at that level. You know, as Nick, as you mentioned, there's several other Sri Lankan players who I think are in better form than he is at the moment. And it feels like a totally weird decision, but it shows, I think, that there's started to be a little bit more depth and a little bit more thinking to the way these organizations are run. And it's not just the case as it might have been a few years ago about, right, who's available in the market. They're actually thinking a little bit about what these players are bringing beyond what they do on the pitch. What do they bring to the dressing room? What have they done when they've fitted into other bits of the organisation and when they've been in different places around the world? And I think it's testament to players like Dasun Shanaka who are going around the world playing in tournaments that the ILT20 was basically impossible to watch in the UK. But it's testament to go around and play franchise cricket around the world, because you will not pick up a contract just from not playing cricket. You have to be playing cricket, and if you can get to leagues which the IPL teams are operating in, and ideally be one of their squads, and you can get to the promised land off the Premier League.
Totally, man. I think we're starting to see that more global outlook towards these T20 franchises, right? But yeah, I mean, and nothing against Dasun Shanaka, and I think it should be said that on flat pitches he can crush pace. Delhi was the most high-scoring ground in the IPL last year, and so if you get him in on a flat one in the last 4 overs, he can do damage, right? I'm not sitting here saying that he's gonna outright fail, but if I look at that Delhi side as we think it's going to shape up, their top 3, I would imagine now will be KL Rahul, Jake Fraser-McGurk, and Faf du Plessis. Faf had a really good year for RCB. Last year, I think it was the highest he's struck in the IPL, around 160. But he's nearly 41, and he had a pretty middling SA20. Jake Fraser-McGurk has had not the best 12 months since the last IPL. So if one of those guys fails, they don't have, as far as I can see, a backup opener on the bench. They're going to have to promote someone into the top 3 from that lower middle order, a Perel or a Stubbs or an Ashutosh. All of those guys, I think, can do those top 3 roles. But I think it would have made more sense for them to go after either a backup kind of top 3 batter or someone like Brevis, who's much more versatile, who can bat 3 to 6. I think with Shanaka, you get a pretty limited skill set, and we've seen in the past that he, at the top franchise level, can he deliver it that reliably? I'm not 100% sure.
While I'm surprised by it, I do love it. I love seeing Sri Lankan players get a chance. Also, there's so many times you watch the IPL and you see quite middling English or Australian players with contracts and be on the bench. And so why shouldn't we have some players from other parts of South Asia who might not make their 11, but will love the opportunity and love to collect their big bag at the end of it. Or I don't know when you get paid if you're an IPL player. Maybe in my mind you get paid in the middle of the tournament, but who knows? Love to be part of it and get involved. So fair play on Dustin Sharlaka for doing the hard work and getting himself there. I think we should reiterate before we move off this that me and you are both of the opinion that on his good days he's very, very, very good and can do something. It's just how frequently those good days appear is what our kind of concern is about his signing to it, about his signing up to the league, right?
Absolutely, man. And I hope that Dustin gets a shot and goes really well. And as you say, from our perspective, it's always great to see Sri Lankans in the league. The more that we see, the better.
Should we move on to some of the rule changes that we're going to be seeing this iteration of the IPL? Making a dramatic return for 2025 is Spittle. Spit is back. You can use it and to shine up the balls. And also, we are going to see the advent of a ball change as well. I think it's after 11 overs. You'll be allowed to change the ball. Nick, what are your thoughts on these two? I want to say innovations, but it kind of feels a little bit like when they kind of tamper with the offside rule slightly at the beginning of every Premier League season.
Yeah, is it an elbow? Is it a toe? I think these rules are really good. The saliva thing, spit is back. I think that's an IPL. No, sorry, I think that's a COVID hangover, right? It was eradicated to cut down the spread of viral bacteria. And I think that we've got to a stage where spit can be back, where it helps the bowlers get more swing. I think that's a really good thing. I hope that the ICC brings saliva back into Test cricket as well. And yeah, the ball change, I think after 11 overs in the second innings to try and eradicate or lessen the impact of dew. I think anything that you can do to reduce dew in the game is really positive. I don't know too much about the mechanics of dew and new balls versus old balls, so I can't say how effective it's going to be, but I think it's really good that they're doing stuff to try and tackle the impact that conditions have, because sometimes they can completely turn games. I noticed during the Champions Trophy they had a sprayer thing that they were using to try and, again, reduce dew, which seemed to be doing a good job. I didn't see the conditions have that much of an impact in the second innings during the Champions Trophy. But yeah, we'll see how it works. But I like them. It's a bit strange that they were announced 2 days before the tournament started. I mean, perhaps they were communicated to teams earlier privately and then just, given to the public right on the eve of the tournament. But I do think it helps if rule changes come slightly earlier than 48 hours ahead of the first ball.
The ball change rule is definitely a thing for teams to want to be aware of more than 48 hours before. But the spit thing really isn't, is it?
No, I guess not.
I should say saliva. Some people might find the word spit a bit spitty.
Yeah. No, I guess the saliva thing can come late. I mean, I think it maybe slightly changes your thinking because you think it would impact the amount of spin that the amount of swing that there's going to be in the power play. But you're right, the ball change is more of an issue. We know that they do a lot of wet ball practice in nets, and maybe it reduces the amount of that you have to do. But I don't think this is going to be something that comes in and just completely eradicates dew in one fell swoop. So maybe they aren't the kind of changes that really alter the way you approach a tournament.
Sorry, I've totally forgotten about the saliva going out during COVID, and I just wonder, just thinking aloud, I wonder if when would that have been 5 years ago now, 2020? So whether there be some players who just totally have basically played their whole professional cricket career without ever using saliva, and actually, if that is something they've got to learn to adapt to again.
I would have thought so. Some of the younger guys, someone like Patirano, although it probably won't affect him massively because he doesn't bowl in the power play. But yeah, definitely some of these younger guys, it'll be a new innovation. It'll be interesting to see whether we notice dramatically more swing for those first 3 or 4 overs than we have done for the past few years.
Shall we move on and have a chat about kind of predictions and who we think might do what? and who top scorers might be, who top wicket takers might be, and who you think might be worth keeping an eye on as well. Nick, should we move? I'm gonna the first question I'm gonna ask is which of these teams do you think is the weakest and is going to struggle the most to avoid, or get the most losses? I wouldn't say avoid finishing bottom, but which is good.
So I have been hungrily consuming IPL content this week. I've been getting my hands on everything that I can, and it's really interesting because I can't remember a season when there's been less consensus among commentators and analysts as to who's going to be good and who is going to be bad. But I think the one thing that pretty much everyone seems to agree on is that LSG on paper are the weakest team in this tournament. I struck on some of the issues last week. Let me go back into my notes and have a look at their 11. But we've got Mitchell Marsh playing as a out-and-out batter, probably opening the batting with Pant. Then you've got Aidan Markram having another overseas slot, a guy who hasn't really done it in the IPL. You've got David Miller and Badoni 5 and 6, and then their bowling, they've got a real injury crisis, right? So Mayank Yadav is out for at least the first half of the IPL. Given his record, I don't think it's unlikely that he misses the tournament in its entirety, and he is their really strike bowler, their X-factor weapon. There also seems to be injury concerns around Avesh and Mohsin Khan. I've heard that Shardul Thakur and I think Shivam Mavi have been pictured with the team, so potentially some late additions. But yeah, I think on paper this looks like the weakest team by a stretch. I mean, you'd think that Pant will win you some games, Puran will win you some games. They've got a new young quick Prince Yadav who did really well in the SMAT, who people are excited about. They've got Ravi Bishnoi. So, I mean, with the IPL, you've got quality in all of these 11s, but I do think this looks clearly to be the weakest side.
Yeah, I think the two definitives that everyone across the IPL commentary comment universe seems to have is that LSG are the weakest squad, and that Mumbai Indians are totally reliant on Bumrah's fitness. They seem to be the two that everyone could be seems to be banking on, the two I want to say predictions. The only thing I would kind of suggest is that kind of traditionally, I want to say traditionally, the worst squad or the worst team in the IPL appears to be Punjab Kings. But there seems to be a feeling that they might be about to turn that all around.
Yeah, I really like Punjab Kings, and I think that they've got one of the deeper squads going. If you like, in terms of bench strength, I think they've got lots of guys who they can bring in who could be really good. And I also like the fact that they've got players in form, right? So Josh Inglis is having a bit of a moment. Shreyas Iyer had a really good Champions Trophy. Omar Zai's in great form. I also just love the way that their bowling stacks up, because you look at Janssen, Arshdeep and Chahal, that is wickets, right? I would expect you to get at least 60 wickets between those three, and then you balance that with the kind of stingy left arm spin of Harpreet Brar. They've got a bit of matchup bowling from Maxwell. They've got this kid Suryansh Sedge, who I really, really like, and Shashank Singh, one of the breakout stars of last year. I think this team's got a lot going for it. They picked up Wadera, a really good pickup from Mumbai. It's deep, and they've got their bench. They've got numerous ways they can go with this team. I like them. They're in my top 4.
I've got some comments coming in. If you're watching on not on Instagram, on YouTube, then do leave us your comments. I think next week I might try and put the show on Instagram as well. I thought I was going to be able to get it on X or Twitter. But apparently I can't because we don't have a Premier account. Maybe I'll just get the blue tick. Who knows? Didith has written Dom from the comment section, and he's referring to this. This is Dom, who you might know from Murali End. who will be joining us at some point, possibly about the PSL. I don't know, Dom, you could be our PSL correspondent from when that starts in a few weeks. Guys, we'll come in to get a game for SRH. So I've got some exclusive information that apparently in training he's been absolutely superb. A few weeks ago, though, Nick, a couple of weeks back when we did our IPL preview, you had him in the Sunrisers starting 11, right? This is
I've got him in the 11 just because of the way that they shape up and that they've got a slight shortfall of domestic middle order batters. So I think he'll probably start tomorrow. I think the big thing to watch out for if he does start is how Rahul Chahar goes with the ball, because they've got two leg spinners in that squad, Chahar and Zampa. Zampa is proven quality. But Chahar, you know, if you go back a few years, he was a really crucial cog in some of those Mumbai Indians sides. He's kind of regressed. And I think last year was his worst year in the IPL to date, but he's still pretty young. I think he's only about 24, 25. So if Chahar goes well tomorrow and Kamindu starts, I think Kamindu will get a decent run. If Chahar goes for some tap, they'll be likely to bring Zampa in, and Kamindu, I think, in that case, would be the man who makes way, because you've got to say that Head, Klaassen, and Cummins, as long as they don't pick up any injuries, are locked on to play a full season.
Dineth has said that he missed my exclusive information, which was that Kamindu is apparently doing quite well, pulling up trees in training. SRH are a team that are quite fancied, or kind of in the running. Some people are suggesting. Who else do you think might be there or thereabouts come the end of the tournament, Nick?
Okay, so I have picked my top four as Punjab Kings, Gujarat Titans, Sunrisers, and Mumbai Indians. But again, as I say, I've heard no consensus on this. And I think CSK could be really good. I think RCB aren't far off. KKR could do a repeat of last year. I can see potential in pretty much most of these sides. And I think that on paper, it's the most even season of the IPL we've seen in a long time. But yeah, I'm picking those four. I think Sunrisers are going to win it for me.
So I reckon my four that I think are going to be at the business end are going to be Sunrisers, CSK. I had the other two, Rajasthan Royals, and I think RCB. But I'm not.
Okay, interesting.
Because I always think there's always one team where you're like, oh, they kind of start off a little bit neither here nor there, and then right at the end they put a run through in the last few weeks and kind of go on through. And also with them, you just think that they might get a bit of momentum. If one or two players kind of find some form, you can see them carrying it through. The thing is as well, though, right? I mean, the tournament's quite long at this point.
The tournament's long. There's plenty of time to get it together. But I mean, my issue would be with them is that they've got these players who could be great, but they could also be really shit, right? Like Phil Salt had a terrible Champions Trophy. Obviously, T20 is a different format, his preferred format. I think Livingston, again, could be great, but he could be dreadful. Tim David could be dreadful. Their bowling looks stronger than last year with Hazelwood, Bhuvi, and Yash Dayal. They've got a good selection of seamers, and people are really excited about this guy Rasik Dar. Although he hasn't done it, I don't think he was particularly good for Delhi last year, but they paid decent money for him and think he's going to be good. I think he's sort of variations at the back end kind of bowler, but to me they look maybe a bowler short, and I've got question marks about their batting. But that's not to say that if everything goes right, they could be shit hot. And I think you know what you're going to get from Virat, right? He's going to be towards the top end of those run scorers.
Of course, I didn't mention Mumbai Indians. We mentioned Bumrah as well. Let's talk about who the big wicket takers could be, Nick. Bumrah, I say for my money, but I think it's kind of now universally appreciated around the world that he is the kind of the best bowler in the world currently, almost in all formats. No, not almost, in all formats. Who do you think are the bowlers who'll be picking up the big wickets, and who the kind of youngsters that maybe people aren't talking about who you think might be ones to watch this tournament?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, Trent Bolt is going to take a lot of wickets for them. I think he's the leading power play wicket taker in IPL history. And so he will probably bowl 3 overs up front and be really important. Deepak Chahar is going to be important for them given Bumrah's absence. I think they'll probably rely a bit more on spin. So I expect we'll see both Mujib and Santner starting the season. And tomorrow, I think, or Sunday, I think we'll see Khan Sharma as well. I reckon they'll go with 3 spinners. I'd imagine that we might see Hardik having to pick up a bit more slack with the ball than he has sometimes in seasons past with Bumrah's absence. I think, look, there's no doubt that they're a worse team without Bumrah. Anyone would be. He's without doubt the best T20 bowler in the world. I think the best all-format bowler in the world. But I think they're reasonably well equipped to cover his absence. And if they can go okay through the first couple of weeks of the tournament, we've heard that he's going to rejoin the squad in April, but we don't know exactly when. They should get a boost, right, when he comes back. So I'd expect them, if they can make a decent-ish start and Bumrah can come back, then I think they'll be in and around the playoffs. Because I really like their top 5, top 6, and it didn't fire at all last year, but I expect it to be much better this year. I think Ryan Rickleton is a burgeoning all-format star, and I think that he's going to be someone who comes into the IPL and does really well. I think the worry from a Mumbai perspective might be that if they get off to a shocking start, as they have done, they've got a history for starting slowly. Look, India have got a huge series coming up in England. Is there a situation where the BCCI says we don't want Bumrah playing the second half of an IPL campaign that already looks doomed? We'll see how this plays out, but no doubt it's a absence for them that they're going to miss. But I still like the team. I think they can win games without Bumrah, and I expect them to get a real boost. As you say, Marky, long tournament, and if he does come back, it could lead to Mumbai really peaking at the right time.
Yeah, they've had a little bit of a backroom shuffle as well since last IPL.
Oh man, Mahala's back.
Yeah, Mahala's back. We've also seen their satellite teams in the ILT20 and in South Africa start to do done quite well this season. So that kind of implies that obviously the players are very different, but a lot of the backroom staff in terms of the data people and the analysts are at least providing the players with the right kind of knowledge that they need, and they've got good game plans. I think that's kind of what we can start reading into that. So maybe what made Mumbai is starting to kind of come back after a couple of years in the doldrums. The last big mega auction wasn't good for them, but this one, it's a whole new start, right? Which is why everyone's being so cagey about who they think is going to do well and who's going to do badly, because we just don't know. But that's the excitement of the tournament, right? It's the best players in T20 cricket all coming together. Apart from, of course, a couple of Pakistanis.
Who are you fancying to win the whole thing, Marky?
Oh, I don't know why you asked me that today. So coming on to this, I was looking at the betting markets and seeing who they had as favourites and who they didn't have as favourites. Sunrisers were quite high up on the betting, and I thought that seems like quite a good shout. Though I think I was looking at Paddy Power and they had Rajasthan Royals as being potentially finishing last.
Yeah, everyone's hating the Royals. I don't quite know why, because Lucknow to me seem clearly a weaker team. I think you could see that.
Is it the lack of all-rounders? Is that what we're not seeing?
Yeah, I guess
all-rounders win tournaments.
I guess if you look at them compared to last year, the team looks worse, right? They've lost Bolt, they've lost Chahal, they've lost Butler. But then I think Jaiswal didn't have a particularly good year last year. They've picked up Nitish Rana. They picked up Hasaranga, Archer Dikshana, Tushar Deshpande. So, I don't hate this team at all. I think they could be good. I think a lot probably depends on Jaiswal and Samson and whether Parag can have the same kind of year as he did last year. Can Dhruv Jurel take that step up? Yeah, someone's saying that they're lacking all-rounders despite Hasaranga, but I think that was the same. Dineth saying that, but I think that was the same situation last year, right? And they started out really hot.
So when you speak to people involved in cricket, they always point to Rajasthan Royals as being like the most well-run franchise, right?
Yeah.
And the people in and around it have kind of hinted that when they go to the auction, they're looking at it slightly differently, where they're looking for players to fill a role, to play a certain role, right? And when you think about it from the way kind of other sports work, if you look at football with the NFL or in rugby, or then that's how the best teams tend to recruit. They don't go, who's the best player available? Let's just buy them. They go, right, how do we want to play cricket? What roles do people need to play, and who do we get to fill those roles? Which is why I think, all that has made me think that these guys might be due a championship, basically, because if you get things right at the back, that might take a little while to filter through to the front, basically.
I think for the last two tournaments at the halfway stage, you've probably said like they look the best team. I think they won 8 of their first 9 last year.
Yeah.
And they started really hot the year before. And I mean, if you look at them in terms of batting depth, so I've touched on that top 5, they'll probably have Hetmeyer as their finisher at 6, that we know they like to bring him in late. Then don't forget about the impact sub. They might go with someone like Shubham Dubey. And then you've got Hasaranga and Archer 8 and 9. So for me, in a T20 side, that looks like good batting depth. I don't have an issue with that. I think is there too much riding on Jofra Archer, who is still working his way back from injury and hasn't been in the best form for England during this last little white ball stretch? Look, but I think Theeks could be a really good pickup for them. It's one of those, we're going to have to wait and see how they start the tournament and how they finish the tournament, more importantly.
Yeah, I think it's all about how they finish it, right? Which players are injured, which players, because how many times do we see teams get to the back end of tournaments and then either key players have to leave, they've got to go play international cricket, or they're not fit or something like that. So I keep saying it's a long tournament. We're going to be back with you here in the Big Bag every week at least, possibly even more if exciting things happen. So do stick with us, hit the subscribe, hit that follow across all our channels, because we're going to be on them all the way through. Nick, let's move away from talking about the teams and start talking about the individuals. Who are the players that you're excited about seeing, who people watching and listening to this might not necessarily have heard about before? Because I know you've been taking some really deep dives into some of the squads and some of the data around them.
Yeah, man. I think number 1 who I'm most excited to see is Suryant Shedge, a guy who had an amazing smat for Mumbai, death hitter, seam bowler. He hit basically one of every 4 balls for 6 during the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy. He's 22. People are calling him the next Hardik, the next Sky. I've heard him being called. We'll see whether he starts the season for Punjab, but certainly someone with a big future. Prince Yadav at Lucknow, I'm looking forward to seeing. I think he might take the new ball given their seamers crisis. Nishant Sindhu at Gujarat Titans, if he gets game time, he's 20. He's a proper batter and he bowls stingy left arm spin, so he could be a serious player for India in the future. And I think I would be tempted to maybe slide him into their team ahead of Awashi Sundar if I was pulling the strings, but we shall see. In terms of players who've played a bit more, I'm really excited to see how Ashutosh Sharma goes at Delhi. He had such a good year for Punjab last year. He hits these really elegant, flowing leg side sixes. So want to see if he can have a repeat of that season. Excited to see a bit more of Ankrish Raghavanshi at KKR. He's still only 20 and looked really good in flashes last year. I guess in terms of slightly more established names, Marky, looking forward to watching Tilak Varma bat as always. Want to see whether he can take that step up to being like, I think he's an established name, but he's someone who we expect to be a superstar in the future, right? I think he's in that category of guys who could be due a breakout. So it's interesting to see if he can take that step this year. Likewise, Sai Sudarshan, and obviously always excited to watch Abhishek Sharma bat. He was so good last year. Can he do it again for SRH? If he can, I think they'll be in really good shape. In terms of overseas players, I think of guys who haven't done it in the IPL before. I'm looking at batters like your Inglis's, your Rickletons, your Phillips, your Ravindras. I think one of those guys would be my pick for a guy who hasn't necessarily made an impact in the IPL yet to come in and do really, really well.
The one player I'm looking forward to is a man who, he's at the back end of his career. We might only see him face a couple of balls and innings. And, he's at the back end of his career. He got overlooked by India, or at least we're meant to forget about his India career. That's, of course, MS Dhoni, the old man of Chennai, who's now been fully, I'd imagine, hours before the first game at this point. He should be fully thawed out and being warmed up and ready for taking out the deep freeze and ready for action.
Yeah, man, he's defrosted. I saw him playing a Patirana Yorker. And I should say that Patirana is another guy who I'm really looking forward to seeing. It's been much talked about the action, the difficult SA20 that he had. But if he's on form with their bowling attack, I think he could take a bag load of wickets. And I don't know if you've seen pictures of him, Marky, but he looks swole. He's looking bigger. I've been calling for it for a couple of years that what Patirana really needs to do is put on some muscle. And when I saw the picture of him running into bowl in his CSK training kit, I was like, there's definitely some muscle mass there now.
Yeah, what are we thinking? Are we thinking that the kind of slight starting of the remodeling that we saw in the SA20 was about trying to get into have a new variation or be slightly different for the IPL? Presumably, I'd imagine that he's hoping that at the beginning of this tournament he's going to be kind of fully fit, raring to go, because he's one of the breakout stars of the last few IPLs.
Yeah, man, he's been amazing. And I think still possibly slightly under the radar for casual fans. I would imagine that his slightly shifting of the action was to try and prevent injuries, right? Because he's been off the field so much in the past 2 years, and that lower release point must be taking a real toll on his body. But as you say, maybe it's slightly new variations. Maybe it helps him to swing the ball a little bit more. But of course, when you remodel anything, it takes time. And I think just because Patirana went around the block in the SA20 a little bit and was in and out of Joburg's side, that doesn't mean that he's not going to be really good here. And with their bowling attack, you've got Ashwin and Jadeja, who are going to be super stingy, especially at Chepauk, where, we know it's a spinning pitch. They've got Noor Ahmad, who might well start. And Patirana's going to come in and bowl at the back end when teams are looking for runs. And, yeah, if he's on song, if he can stay on the park for a full season and shows the sort of form that he did last year, I think he's a really good pick to be the top wicket taker in the tournament. Bet365 have got him at 15-1, so they think he's got a decent chance as well.
Can we talk about Nicholas Pooran?
Yeah.
Because he had quite a tournament. He always has quite a tournament. Do you think he's going to be as effective this year? And what are the other kind of West Indian players you've kind of got an eye on?
I think you kind of know what you're going to get from Pooran. I think he's going to win Lucknow probably 2 or 3 games. I wonder whether he can find the sort of consistency to go on a step from that and become really one of the top run scoring batters in the league. I guess part of it depends on where he bats. I hope he bats at 3. I think that's the best slot for him. In terms of other West Indians, it seems like we're actually slightly lighter on West Indians in the league than we have been in the past 2-3 years. Always excited to see the old KKR double act of Troy Russ and Narayan, how they go, whether they can continue to keep defying time. I think we might see flashes of Romario Shepherd again, clumping sixes at the back end of innings. And I I'm interested to see what we get from Shafane Rutherford. I think he probably won't start the season. Shamar Joseph could start LSG given the injuries they've got. I think that's an interesting one to look out for. I haven't seen him really do it in T20 cricket yet. He's obviously full of talent, so that will be interesting to see if he can take that step. It's a hard thing to do though at the IPL. Yeah, interested to see Shafane Rutherford. I think that Phillips will likely start in front of him, but he's someone who I've been really impressed with during the past winter. Those series against Sri Lanka and against England, he played IPL cricket years ago when he was really young, and now he's back after a break. So whether he can make that breakthrough, something to keep an eye
on. Nick, should we kind of wrap it up there for this week? We'll obviously be back all the way through the tournament. Do you want to? I was going to kind of end on by asking you, in the next week, is there anything that you think that people should be definitely particularly keeping an eye out for?
I'll give you some wrap-up thoughts, Marky. So, I'm going to give you my top run scorer, top wicket taker.
Yeah.
I think top run scorer, and I'm pretty safe on these, or maybe I'm not that safe. Top run scorer, I'm going KL Rahul, which will probably be unpopular, but he looks in really good form, and I think with the batting order they've constructed around him at Delhi, he's got the license to bed in, which sounds a weird thing to say. We talk about having the license to hit, but I think he's got the license to block a few balls and bat through the innings. That market is basically always won by a opener, usually an Indian opener. So I think you're looking out for your Gills, your Kohlis, your KLs, your Jaiswals, your Ruturajas. Ruturaj may be someone who goes under the radar a bit. I think Chakravarti is going to be the leading wicket taker, who's another guy in hot form, but it's basically always won by a seamer. I think a spinner's only won it a couple of times. So if Patirana is back to his best, I think he's got a good shout. In terms of outside bets for top batter, I quite like Inglis at 51-1. Bowlers, I don't mind Deshpande at 26-1, but you're really taking a punt on those things. Things to look out for, Marky.
Inglis at 55-1 is a fairly good.
I think that's.
I'm not saying. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying I think he's going to do it, but that is a nice return for somebody who's in quite good form coming into this tournament.
He's in really good form. He's a good player of spin. If he opens the batting for Punjab, then I think at 51-1 he's mispriced. But we'll see. He could bat in their middle order, and then I think that he's less good value there. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I'm looking to put a bit of money into my betting account and have a few punts here and there. In terms of things to watch out for, I guess something that people are talking about is whether a side will break 300. I think it could well happen if we get the kind of pitches we did last year. I think Yovesh is saying, will SRH do it on Sunday? I think if any team is going to do it, SRH are the team who are best set up to. That game is, I think it's in Hyderabad, isn't it? We'll see. They could well. I mean, wouldn't it be great if they started with a bang and racked up 300?
I'll read out your comments because he said, "Will SRH score 300 on Sunday against one India and teach her?" I mean,
hopefully not just against those two.
Hopefully not against those two. Otherwise, I'd imagine those two, if they went for 150 runs each within their 4 over spells, I don't think they'll ever play T20 IPL cricket ever again. But
yeah, they'll be out. I think one other thing to look out for, Marky, is this just struck me in the bath last night. Obviously, all I do is think about the IPL at this time of year. And I wonder whether we might start to see a bit more spin at the back end of innings in those last 3-4 overs. I mean, if you look at the finishers around the league, so many of them have got a strong pace bowling preference. And we saw last year that pace really went at the back end. So given those two things, I wonder, whether sides might be sort of more inclined to bowl spinners through those death overs where we normally think that it's a banker, that they're going to go back to pace.
Interesting. Last year was a very big run scoring year for the IPL. Will this year be a big run scoring year? Which teams have got it right at the auction? Which teams will crash out the tournament early? The big bag's going to be with you all the way through it. Remember to follow us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button to Cricket Smash. We're on Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram as well. Find us across there. We're going to be much more active on these pages in the coming days, weeks, and months. So stick with us. We've been the Big Bag. Nick, do you want to say goodbye?
Bye, everybody. Looking forward to getting into it and seeing you next week.
I'm going to have to hit the end stream shortly, and then at some point I'm going to have to confront, or Estelle's going to confront me and say I forgot to hit the local record. So hopefully I'll be back next week. But if not, I'm leaving this message on the internet for you all to know who the main suspect could be. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.